Hey, thanks for tuning in again today. Here we are, April. This year is going incredibly fast, like they always seem to do. And I'm going to do a two-part video today. I want to show kind of all the things that I've managed to pick up during the month of March. And including last weekend, I did a real fun trip with my wife to Seattle for a long weekend. Managed to meet up with Norman Mazzy Maslov, which was a highlight, and we'll talk about that on the back side of this video. But let's get started with all the stuff that I managed to find this month. I'm going to say it was a banner month. A lot of this stuff I found locally, all of my favorite record shops here in northern Colorado, and a couple things I found online through online auctions that we'll talk about. You know, if you haven't watched any online auctions, it's a lot of fun. There are various record shops around the country that do these on YouTube and Facebook. There are, of course, members of the vinyl community like Norman Maslov, Patrick the Vinyl Archivist. The Jazz Bums have jumped into the game, and of course, Rob the Waxed is a regular auctioneer. And I watch all of those auctions when I can, but I have recently, and I talked about this in I think my last video, discovered this company called Collectco. They're out of suburban Nashville, and they are auctioning off serious heat every week, like 4 or 5 days a week. They will do, new records, and then they also will do vintage. They call it new vintage finds. They will auction for 3 or 4 hours, 4 or 5 nights a week. It's crazy. That is Kill City, the 1977 release from Iggy Pop and James Williamson, along with Scott Thurston is along for the ride, playing bass guitar and various other instruments as well. You may know Scott Thurston. He was a longtime sideman for Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. He was usually stage left in the back behind whoever was playing bass, whether it was Ron Blair or Howie, on keyboards, harmonica, rhythm guitar. Scott Thurston is a talented musician. Anyway, back to this album. Pretty cool. You don't see this. I've never seen this out in the wild, and I kind of jumped on this when they showed this. This is an original 1977 pressing. It's got Ken Dunn for Ken Dunn Recorders stamped in the dead wax. It's by no means, though, a very cool green vinyl on Bomp Records. It's by no means anywhere near an audiophile pressing record. This is a kind of a rudimentary recording. It does sound pretty good. You know, for if we're gonna get an urgent Iggy Pop record, it's gonna sound like this, okay? But great songs. The title track is probably the best. The way I'll describe this, probably the best mid '70s Rolling Stones track that you've never heard before. Kill City is an amazing song. Love the slam, love the drive. I Got Nothing, which is track 4 on side 1, one of my favorites as well. Iggy actually goes a little soul and a little gospel-y. You'll hear it in that song. I might play a little snippet. And the story behind this record is there they are, a terrible twosome there. After Stooges kind of imploded in the early 1970s, Iggy was hanging out with Bowie and other people in LA, serious heroin problem, and he and James Williamson decided to do some demos, and they wanted to shop it around for a new record deal for Williamson and Iggy Pop. And that was the songs that are comprised on this album. Now, eventually Iggy Pop cleaned up. He was actually doing the demos. He was traveling back and forth from a facility in suburban LA to do these tracks. I don't know if it was on the weekend or during the week. He would get a furlough, being treated for heroin addiction, and would lay down his vocals. Now, eventually, this album was finally put out in 1977, so it took some time. Only after the success of Lust for Life and The Idiot were people maybe interested in listening to these demos. One of the first people to hear these tapes, none other than Seymour Stein, who we just lost last week, longtime executive at Sire Records. He signed Blondie, Madonna, tons of other people. But anyway, he listened to these tapes, and I think he passed. But anyway, this small label, Bomp Records, put this thing out. And there is a restored version. I think it came out in 2010 that sounds a little bit better. The master tapes have been lost. But this is a very, very cool, unique Iggy Pop record. James Williamson, of course, second guitar player, took over for Ron Ashton. Ron Ashton, I believe, moved over to bass guitar. And Williamson has an incredible tone on Raw Power and also on this record. So if you can find this thing, it is worth picking up. I managed to get this thing on that auction for less than $40. I was really pleased with that. Okay, up next is a classic album that I didn't have a copy of this record before, and as much as I would love to find a UK Vertigo, they're sky high, astronomically priced right now. And if you can find an early U.S. pressing on that olive green Warner Brothers label, if it's clean, this thing rivals, I've been told, the UK vertical pressing. But I know that UK vertical is the way to go, but I am a passing Sabbath fan. And again, happy, to have an original U.S. pressing. This is, I would have loved to, been 19 years old in 1970 and dropped the needle on this record. Probably would have blown my mind. It's an amazing listen. The musicianship on this thing is incredible, and I prefer the next album, Paranoid, if I'm being honest, over this album. But what a statement this thing made when it was released, and this is hard to find in clean condition. So a 1970 early pressing on that green Warner Brothers label is, I'm calling it a great find. Have you ever been shopping in a record shop and you end up buying something that they're playing on their turntable, over their PA in the store? That happened to me a couple weeks ago in Longmont, Colorado. This is a comp from Daryl Hall and John Oates. This was put out, I think, in 1976, after these guys moved from Atlantic over to RCA. And this has got all of the near hits and the hits of their early run on Atlantic Records. The big one, of course, is She's Gone. I love When the Morning Comes, kind of a folky, version of Hall & Oates in that time frame. But a fun record. It sounded really, really nice. And it happened to be, let's pull this out, on Atlantic. And there's the record. Really nice condition. It was looks like it was a radio station promo copy due to the tracking list they have here on the front cover. Anyway, kind of a cool comp that kind of brings everything together from those early albums of Daryl Hall and John Oates. Continuing with Daryl Hall and John Oates, Bigger Than Both of Us. This is one of their first records on the RCA label, and I've never seen a cleaner copy. That's the reason I picked this up, and it was all of $3. I love this record. Real kind of R&B, Philly soul. John Oates had a couple lead vocals on this. But the thing that I love on here is Be What You Want, Be What You Are. An epic track. And, of course, this has got Rich Girl on it. But a fun record. And I love the front cover, which, reading the liner notes, you'll find out that Daryl Hall kind of was the set designer on that. Look at a box of Ritz crackers, bottle of red wine, another time capsule from, what year did this come out? I think this is 77. Strong record and kind of overlooked if you think about, the later, moving into the 80s and all the hits, they kind of became a hit machine. But there's a lot of soul and a lot of heart in these earlier Hall & Oates records. Okay, one of my favorite newer shops in Fort Collins is a place called Driver 8 Records. I've mentioned it before. Shout out to Charles, the owner. I have never seen this record in the wild. This is, of course, the same band that backed up John Hyatt on Bring the Family, the fantastic solo Hyatt record. But we've got Ry Cooder, Jim Keltner on drums, Nick Lowe on bass, John Hyatt on guitars and lead vocal. This is a fun record. It's a UK pressing that I picked up at Driver 8. First time I've ever seen this in the wild. This had a kind of a minor, alternative radio, college rock hit, Solar Sex Panel. I haven't heard this record in years. I used to have it on CD. I've never seen it on vinyl, so happy to add this one to the collection. There's another local shop in Fort Collins. They've been around here for years, and getting to know a couple people at the front counter, they might tip me off as I walk in. Hey, you need to go, check this. There's something new in the new arrivals bin you might be interested in, and I've got the reissue that's really well done of Hunky Dory. I don't have an original. Would love to get a UK original, but what I picked up this day a couple weeks ago is, believe it or not, a great sounding pressing of this record, and it was the RCA Dynaflex pressing. You see that Dynaflex on the bottom of the label. A lot of people will poo-poo Dynaflex records. I think they sound great, and I was happy to find this one. I think it's a 1974 pressing. Such a great album, Changes, Oh You Pretty Things, Life on Mars, of course, one of the epic Bowie songs. The sign of who was it that told me, or their opinion? John Bandy, I'm looking at you right now. He said the sign of a good pressing on Hunky Dory, listen for a nice, clear, distinctive piano sound. There's a lot of piano on this record, and I can confirm, John, that That piano sounds clear, vibrant, true, as you would want a well-recorded piano to sound. Of course, if we're talking rock and roll and Bowie, and the great Mick Ronson, look no further than Queen Bitch, and this is one of the ultimate guitar-based Bowie songs, Queen Bitch. If you don't know it, run and stream it or put on a copy if you have one to remind yourself. Hunky Dory, that iconic cover, this was released originally in 1970, and I have a 74 Dynaflex pressing. I've got another record, and this is a brand new reissue that I picked up at Driver 8 Records. It is the first time it's ever been pressed on vinyl. This is the Bottle Rockets, an amazing record. I think this was put out in, originally in 1997. This is an alt rock, an alt country classic. Lead singer, lead guitar player Brian Henneman. He was a roadie for Uncle Tupelo, and then he appears on the very first Wilco record as well. From when did the first Wilco record come out? I think it came out in 95. Bottle Rockets, 24 hours a day. Great record. I mentioned auctions earlier. Mazzy has been doing a few auctions now. He has been kind of put in charge of selling off an acquaintance's collection that just kind of likes the experience of watching his record collection being auctioned off. He apparently hasn't played a record in 15 years. He has no real emotional connection anymore to the records, and he enjoyed the way that Mazzy, with usually a couple of cohorts in hand as well, either the Doctor or Coffee Dave will be assisting, sometimes Rob the Waxed. Anyway, long story, a couple weeks ago, Mazzy did another kind of auction episode and was really happy to get this promo copy of 101. This, of course, is the live album from 1988, Depeche Mode. Kind of timely because they're now touring again off of the new record. This is pretty cool. It was recorded in Pasadena at the Rose Bowl, and kind of a career summation, greatest hits at that point in time in 1988. There would be decades more to go with the Depeche Mode, and as stated, they're currently touring. Anyway, great record, some incredible renditions of some of these songs, and this happens to be a promo copy as well. You'll see that now and there. Really great condition. Happy to pick this up. Another classic rock album that I did not have a copy of. I wasn't about to go buy a reissue. These things have been reissued through the years, and you just don't know. You've got to do a bunch of research to determine if they're worth having or not. But you don't often see cleaner copies of Kiss records, and this is one of my favorites. Shout It Out Loud. I love Detroit Rock City. I love the Peter Criss vehicle Beth that I used to remember, on FM radio when I was a kid. But there it is, Destroyer. And this was an original first pressing on the, there it is, the Casablanca label. Real clean, near mint. I think I paid about $32 for this. Thought it was well priced. And happy to add it to the collection. Okay, last record before I move on to last weekend's Seattle trip. This was another incredible find. I've only seen two of these in the wild before. The Dennis Wilson, fantastic solo record, Pacific Ocean Blue. Really, really nice condition. Sad story, you know, he put this out, and it wasn't long after, you know, before his tragic death. Really, really nice, beautiful condition. Well priced for under $40. I jumped on this thing and have managed to give this a listen just once so far. Really enjoyed it, and looking forward to giving it another spin. Pacific Ocean Blue, one of those iconic, kind of hard to find records out there, kind of on a par with, I would say, the Buckingham Nicks record, as far as difficult to find. So my wife and I had a trip planned to Seattle. We try to go somewhere in the spring, like a little city break where we love cities, and she had never been to Seattle. I've been there a couple times, but it's been about 10 years. So we took the opportunity. We got some great flights out of Denver. Spent a long weekend there. Just got back yesterday, and you know, I gave a heads up to Norman Masloff, Mazzy, and thought it would be nice to maybe meet up for a cup of coffee or a beer or something, or a cocktail. And he was nice enough to invite us to his home on a Saturday morning. So we went over there. He fired up his espresso machine, and we had some cappuccinos and some croissants. And the price that I had to pay was doing a whack-a-mole video with Mazzy. I was concerned because he's got a large collection, and you know, this is where you're randomly pulling records blindly, and then you're expected to kind of pontificate about those records, and I was concerned that I would be stumped. And of course, the first record, I was totally stumped. A Lord Sutch record. I've never heard of Lord Sutch. Anyway, it was a fun video. Mazzy, thank you again for the hospitality. We loved it. You got a great house. It was fun kind of seeing your collection in person. So that was definitely a highlight of the trip. And he gave me a few recommendations. Now, in advance of going, I knew we would kind of be hitting the tourist trail. My wife, again, had never been before. So, you know, one of the first things we did the first morning, after finding an incredible opportunity to have like a designer donut and some coffee, we made our way down to Pike Place Market. I had done some research and knew that there was a shop at Pike Place Market called Holy Cow Records. And if you've been to Pike Place, it's on the lower level, actually 2 levels down. Pike Place is a lot bigger than you would think it is, and it's kind of like a labyrinth if you go downstairs. Anyway, that was my first stop as far as record shops was concerned, and that was Holy Cow. Really, really recommend, if you're in Seattle, you should check out that place. He has a huge collection of 45s, and then a really nice kind of curated mix of great records, all used. And he has like a $3, you know, bargain bin as well. I found one record in the shop that I walked out with, and that happened to be an 82 Japanese pressing of the Nightfly, Donald Fagen. You know, I have got a pristine original U.S. copy of this. This is nice because you're getting the same cut from Robert Ludwig that is pressed on silent Japanese vinyl. You know, a lot of the people, a lot of the pushback as far as Japanese pressings is, oh, there's no low end, or they're a little too bright. Now, this is kind of a bright album to begin with, but I will report that there's plenty of low end here, as much as on my American pressing. And being the Steely Dan freak that I am, when I saw this with the intact Obi, pretty well priced, I checked it out later on Discogs, and it was well within Certainly under, kind of the high price on Discogs. But picked it up, really happy. Had a little chat with the guy there. I don't remember his name, but he has a really nice shop. So if you're at Pike Place Market, make sure you go 2 stories down underneath, where all the salmon are and everything, and check that place out. After our visit with Mazzy was kind enough to drop my wife and I off, kind of in our kind of area where we wanted to start exploring on Saturday, and that was the Fremont neighborhood. Very, very cool neighborhood, and he had definitely recommended Jive Time, and I got a couple tips from other people as well. Hey, you should check out Jive Time Records. I love their logo. And shout out to Concert Buddy. He just put out his video because he had been in Seattle like a week or two before that I was. But he had mentioned Jive Time as well. Anyway, Jive Time was my favorite shop in Seattle. I think I went to 5 shops. We'll talk about them as we move through this. I just thought they had the best curation, a really, really nice, well-kept shop. I shot a little bit of video there, not much, but a little bit. And I found 4 or 5 fantastic records there. The first thing that caught my eye, and this was on the wall, was the incredible Elliott Smith record, Either Or. This turned out to be a second pressing, but still an early pressing. Sounds amazing. This is a great record, and something that is, increasingly hard to find are these Elliott Smith records. There is a label, Either Or, kind of that basic pale yellow label. A sad story. This is not something that you're going to listen to every day, but man, this guy was so talented, and you could tell that he was a student of the Beatles. The melody, the layering there, and the incredible just talent. His acoustic guitar playing is kind of like through the roof. Elliott Smith, Either Or, another great find in Seattle. Okay, another pickup. That would be, I think this was the 4th X record. More Fun in a New World. It's the last one that was produced by Ray Manzarek from The Doors. I haven't even given this a spin yet, but I hardly ever see this in the wild. And, everything that I saw and picked up at Jive Time, original inner sleeve, was in pristine condition. They're obviously, I think, probably very picky in what they put out and what they buy. So anyway, another great X record, I hope. I haven't heard it yet. I don't think I remember any of these songs. I might remember the title track, The New World. Anyway, there is the back cover of that record. Okay, if you see an original UK pressing of Captain Fantastic, by all means, and if it's in near mint condition for $15, jump! Buy that thing immediately, because this is the only way that you should be listening to this record. This, of course, is on the DJM label, and it has, if you put this up to a light, it has a very, very deep red translucency. This is one of my favorite Elton records. I actually did an experiment and did one of those stupid reaction videos. I put the record on and listened to it. It's deep down in my video library. Somewhat embarrassing. You can watch me listen to Someone Saved My Life tonight if you want. It's out there. Anyway, amazing sounding record. The UK pressing for $15 in near mint condition. Thank you, Jive Time. Okay, the last record I picked up at Jive Time, and then we'll move on. There was a BMG club pressing of REM's Document. The record was in near mint condition. I picked it up. Reasonable. I think it was $24. Now, this will be the third pressing that I now own of Document. I have an original Allied pressing, and then I have the I think this is 2017, this limited reissue on gold vinyl. One of my favorite REM records. I wanted to see what this club copy sounded like, and honestly, I can't make any distinction between the club copy and the first Allied pressing. They both explode out of my system. They sound amazing. Such a great record. This is, of course, the last record, the fifth record before they signed with Warner Brothers. So the last IRS release, and it is a powerful record. This one goes out to the one I love. I love Finest Work Song. There's some elements of almost Zeppelin-esque with that song, Finest Work Song. Anyway, so yes, I know I've mentioned I was going to stop buying multiple pressings of the same record. I couldn't help myself. That was, this BMG club press. I was intrigued, and the thing is in mint condition. So, kind of a cool situation across from Jive Time, or kind of kitty corner. There is the Fremont Antique Mall. It's an indoor antique mall, and Jive Time happened to have a little stall in there with more records. So, as my wife was looking around, I guess I had an opportunity to check out some more records, and I picked up for $7 a white label promo of this very cool Robert Fripp record, Exposure. This was released, I think, in 1979. And it's a pretty cool record. There's that white label on Polydor. There are, Robert Fripp and Daryl Hall, funnily enough, teamed up for a couple records in the late 1970s. They both kind of ran into each other, living in New York. And this record has got a little bit of a Crimson-esque prog happening. There is kind of new wave / moving towards punk, and a little bit of ambient experimental a la Eno on this record. It's a lot of fun. And there's an incredible version of Here Comes the Flood with Peter Gabriel, of course, on lead vocals. Robert Fripp worked with Gabriel on that second Gabriel solo record, and for whatever reason, it ended up on this record as well. But anyway, $7, white label promo, mint condition, hell yes. Okay, so later on in the afternoon, my wife and I made our way up into the Ballard neighborhood. Now, Ballard is a really cool part of Seattle if you haven't been there. It's the original kind of fisherman's village. It's along the kind of Puget Sound Canal, leading up to the locks in Ballard. And this is where all the Scandinavians eventually settled after leaving Scandinavia for America. A lot of these folks settled in this neighborhood in Seattle called Ballard. And a lot of old historical wooden clapboard buildings are still there. the whole area has been gentrified. There are breweries, there's high-end retail, but the original buildings have been historically preserved, and it's a really cool, walkable, fun neighborhood to be in Seattle. Tons of restaurants, tons of coffee as well, of course. Um, but also, there was another great record shop up there called Sonic Boom, and lots of new records, and then they also had a pretty nice used section as well. And found one record there. This is Goodbye Jumbo World Party, the Carl Wallinger solo project. I love their records, and this was a huge hit in 1990 for me. I used to hear this all the time. I had it on CD. I actually bought the reissue last year, and after listening to this is a specialty pressing. I think I'm going to let the reissue go. Really, really good sounding record on Chrysalis. Again, Specialty Records Corporation, one of my favorite pressing plants. Anyway, Sonic Boom, loved the shop as well. Just didn't find a ton of stuff there, but was happy to find this for sure. We also made our way up to the Space Needle Park. We did not go up into Needle, but we did go to the Glass Museum, which is there, and also the Mopop Museum of Pop Culture. Used to be Experienced Music Project. The thing was originally developed by Paul Allen. Very, very cool exterior, of course. Frank Gehry, famous architect with the waves and the raw steel and copper. Of course, they have an incredible exhibit on Nirvana and Pearl Jam. If you're ever in Seattle, it's recommended. And then, right across the park was the studios for KEXP, one of my favorite radio stations. They have a big YouTube presence. Check out their YouTube channel. Any indie band coming through town usually will do a live appearance there, and they'll tape a mini set, and you'll find tons of great sounding mini sets on YouTube. Everything from Robin Hitchcock to Jeff Tweedy and more. Anyway, so we saw that building, and I wanted to go check it out. And inside was a little shop called Light in the Attic. Now, Light in the Attic is actually a little label, a boutique label. And they had a nice, well-curated selection of used records, and then a lot of the Light in the Attic releases. I think I may have talked about the Lou Reed reissue that came out last fall, maybe late last summer. All the demos that he had actually mailed to himself as kind of a poor man's copyright. And that's a really cool release that Light in the Attic put out. Anyway, didn't find anything at the shop, but I was impressed with the kind of the studio for the radio station. They had a little cafe in there and a nice little shop. My wife was able to hang out and have a cappuccino and catch up on her social media on a couch while I did a little record shopping. That was the month of March, lots of great local digging around town here, also Boulder and Longmont, and then a quick getaway trip to Seattle, which was very fruitful, as you just saw. Thanks for watching. I'm going to be back later this week with something new. Take care.